Hello, this is the Make Noise No Coast. Holy sh**. Oh yes. So, the No Coast is a complete standalone semi-modular synth. It looks nuts, and that's because it's not like a lot of the more classic analog synths that you perhaps are more familiar with. It actually works much more in the principle of Buchla synthesizers, where you start with a really simple waveform that becomes more complex, and then you've got various kind of shapers and modulators to change how that oscillator changes over time, timbrally. The No Coast lets you explore FM, wavefolding, and harmonic overtones. It's very elegant. I think it's really well thought out. Oh, and it's unbelievably small. So, obviously it can't have escaped your notice this crazy ass panel, which doesn't look anything like a traditional synth that you may be familiar with, and so it's not immediately obvious what is in this machine. So let's do a bird's eye overview. The principle of the machine is that it comes normalized, which is to say it will make sound if you connect MIDI to it or CV and gate without any cables plugged in. So there is a default routing for all of these little building blocks. And the way to see what that is just to follow the little gold arrows around. If you follow the little gold tracks, it kind of shows you, it leads you through where things are pre-routed. And then the idea of these little sockets is that using the cables supplied, you can then break the connections and reroute things in the No Coast. So you can totally rewire the machine internally, and you can wire up the the extra function generators to do more cool things. Or alternatively, if you do have a Eurorack synth, or if you also have perhaps another subtractive synth that's got control voltage outputs and function generators, then you can just patch them straight into the No Coast, and you can patch the No Coast straight into them. So if you don't have anything, you can experiment and make cool new things with this via patching. Or if you do have other stuff, then it'll all interface together. Here we have clock inputs and outputs so that we can clock the No Coast to other things and from other things. Here we have a stepped random voltage source, which is, as it sounds, a stepped random voltage source. And we can use that to introduce uncertainty and strange modulation throughout the rest of the machine. The rate that runs at is based on the internal clock. And we can tap tempo the internal clock as we like, or we can input an external tempo, which it will respect. Down here, you've got a little Wii mixer, and that's got two inputs. That one just goes straight in, and then this one has an attenuverter so that I can make that input positive or negative or off. So it's very flexible, and you can see that it's a little cool LED to indicate what it does, and it has two outputs. So next, we have the oscillator itself. Now, this is obviously a slightly strangely named beast, and has got some things that we're not that familiar with, perhaps overtone and multiply. And the whole principle of how this thing works is it just starts with two really basic waveforms. Those are triangle and square. And it kind of combines them to create overtones that we control here, which then in turn are multiplied, which has this kind of vocal raspy quality. And how the way that you make sound with this thing is basically by modulating those two parameters. And it can create all manner of tones. Obviously, it's like a world of tones, and which also kind of emulate sort of the equivalent of filter sweep. So imagine, so it's like sort of a filter sweep in reverse. probably easier if I just show you. So what I'll do is I will plug the output of this, which is the mixer can just output a voltage with nothing plugged into it, and that's indicated by the little green light here. So I'm just creating a voltage here, and I'm going to plug that into the dynamic control. This controls the loudness of the synth. So as I do that, I just increase the loudness from nothing to audible. And so what we're hearing here is the output of the triangle. And then what I will do is I will plug the output of this square into here. So now we can hear that. So it's got a very kind of raspy quality, and then the triangle is soft and nice. Now, let's play with the overtone control. And one thing we need to do here is we have a balance control, which lets us blend between what they call the fundamental, which is the sort of basic waveform unaugmented, and the overtone, which is the result of this. So we can make this very, very kind of weird and complex, but blend between the two. So this is the overtone that we're hearing. And it's kind of a subtle change, because what we need to do is apply some multiplication. So if I do this, you hear this intrinsic sound, and every overtone setting is going to give us different tones with this. And then what we do is we're going to get our contour generators, which are here. And this first one is called the slope. And it's just a rise, i.e. attack, and fall. And it has a shape control here where it can be linear, which is just a straight down if we have it on this little line that you can see. Or it can go exponential, which makes it really plucky and kind of percussive. And then logarithmic, which has a sort of curved out kind of feel, which is very different as well. So if I push this cycle button, and that will start to act, we can make it go extremely fast. And what you can see by following the arrows is that this slope control is defaulted to overtone. Similarly, you can see down here, this is the output for the slope control, that is normalized to the multiply, but that there's this little control in the way that means that I have to apply it positively or negatively. And then again, I can blend these two, so I can have a really complex shape and blend between the two like this. But you see that this thing effectively works like an LFO with cycle engaged. You can turn cycle off, and then if you trigger it with something like the clock output, then it will play in time like an envelope. Remember, we have our stepped random voltage generator here, or maybe we can use that to control something else. Perhaps I'll get it to do multiply for me instead. And then I'll get my slope generator to do overtones. Sweet. So in addition to this kind of useful kind of LFO and extra envelope generator, we do have a dedicated contour for what is effectively the same kind of thing. It's just another envelope generator which has an onset, which is attack, a sustain, which we can have go down or stay high if we want, and a decay parameter, and also a control to control the kind of shape to make it go more exponential and plucky, which is just really nice and part of the kind of Buchla sound, these kind of exponential envelope generators, which just really go bonk and play and disappear in a plucky fashion. It's just a lovely sound. So what I'll do is actually make this work more like a voice. So I could be using MIDI, by the way, but I'm actually just going to use control voltage and gates, if that's all right, and plug it in there. And then I have a little Q Nexus, which is just working as a keyboard, and that's outputting control voltage. But like I say, that could just be the MIDI output of your computer via you do need a MIDI interface, obviously. And so what's happening is that because it's triggering the gate, you can see that this is down here. The gate fires the contour, and if you follow the arrows, then you'll see that the contour is normaled to the dynamics. So the dynamics control volume over time. So wherever the little arrows are pointing down and out, that's an output. Wherever they're coming in from the top, like here, or whether they've got white around them, then those are inputs. So these inputs are basically like control voltage inputs that will let us modulate like an invisible hand what that little knob is doing. And we can just explore all of the myriad combinations of multiply and overtone. And it does make freaking wicked bass sounds. The no coast is just, it's really interesting. As soon as you introduce dynamics and stuff, it's excellent. These like funny little plucky kind of things that almost sound like they could be samples, like wave, kind of wavetable synths. Because they're just unlike any sound that I've heard a subtractive synth make. With this wonderful kind of like vocal quality. So, I mean, we can just have a lot of fun. Maybe I'll get the step generator to control the time of this. Now this is controlling the rate of the LFO, effectively. Holy shit. So that kind of ruled. So what I will do is I'm going to use my stepped generator here. I'm going to plug it in here because I want to have two copies of it coming out. You can see that the little mixer is going to output this, which is that. And we're going to get two copies of it. So I'm going to stick that into the time. And then I'm going to stick this perhaps into the multiply amount. And I need to get my slope to control the overtone. What will happen? So that makes me think it would be nice to explore frequency modulation, which is where you use the speed of one oscillator to modulate the speed of another. Because this goes so fast, we can do that. So let's do that, shall we? I think we should. Yes, let's. So here we go. This is just the output of the fundamental, aka the triangle. Then what I'm going to do is actually, I want to FM, I want to frequency modulate oscillator with the slope. Now, let's do that. So I'm going to do slope output, because this is the output, it's going down and out. And I'm going to stick it into this linear FM input. So if I then cycle this, nothing happens. Oh gosh. But I have to do this. So just the raw tone takes on this kind of FM, slightly ring modded quality. And then, obviously, if I then blend in the overtone, then we've kind of created a whole new timbre. However, cool as that is, the problem is this isn't changing speed as I'm moving around the keyboard. So what I want to do is I want to make that rate change. I want this little bad boy to move with my oscillator. So the way that I can do that is if I take my 1 volt per octave output from my keyboard and jam it into our friend, this little wee mixer. What that's going to do is create 2 copies of the sound, and that's exactly what I want, because I want one to go into the 1 volt per octave, where it was before, and I want the second one to go into the time. And if I tune it, we get all manner of freaky ass tones, which we can then obviously blend with the overtones and multiplication. So let's get our friend the random voltage generator in again. Hello, friend. Nutty. It's just nuts. Jesus Christ. Can I do this? Is that okay? That's totally fucking crazy. Ace. So I hope by now that you're starting to get an idea that this thing, whilst it may seem simple on the front panel, because of the inherent complexity, possible interconnections and interactivity, cross-patching that you can do, then you can just create these really crazy ass tones and really extend the palette massively. So with that in mind, I think we should go beyond the default sound. And play around, make some sounds, make some sequences, and play around. I'll show you some of the patches that are included in the manual, which is very good, by the way. This first patch is world famous. This is the Krell Patch, originally designed by Todd Barton and here adapted by Walker Farrell of Make Noise. It's self-playing. Gentlemen, would you like to see some more of the Krell wonders? Can you see what's happening here? So it's quite nifty. We've got the slope set to self-cycle. And you see this EOC output? What that is doing, it means that every end of cycle, when this thing's finished its fall stage, it pings out a little gate. And what Walker's done is he's put that into the tempo input, which in turn advances the stepped random voltage generator, and then he's used that to pitch the synth and also to change the slope speed. So it's very nifty. It means that the whole thing is sort of interacting in a cycle. So the slope is triggering the randomness and itself effectively. And the randomness is changing the speed overall. So it's just this cool interactive thing where it goes slow and fast, all by itself. And then we can mess with the timbral parameters, change the pitch and the tone. It's just really fun to interact with. And yes, I am running through Spring Reverb because what else could you possibly run something like this through? Ace. So over here we have two MIDI buses coming in, and this very first one, A, goes by default to CV and to gate to fire the voice off. So if you plug a keyboard in via MIDI, it'll just play just like any other MIDI-enabled synth, all well and good. But we also have a MIDI B, and this can act as a second CV and gate, which is kind of awesome. So this thing can basically be an extra MIDI to CV converter. But using this little program menu thing here and here, you can actually program these outputs to do different things, including outputting control voltage for the note velocity, depending on how hard you're hitting the notes, the control voltage for the mod wheel, which is really good, so that you can set this up to just be an extra function generator, and as you wheel the mod wheel, suddenly stuff will be happening if you've wired this up. It can be an extra gate whenever you push a note down, which is useful for firing off the slope, and it can also create an extra tap temporal triangle or square wave LFO. Also, if you want to edit the no coast and aren't down with the idea of remembering button presses to do all that stuff, the new 1.52 update adds the ability to use MIDI CCs to change the program parameters, how it responds and outputs CV from those little MIDI sockets. And additionally, this thing, which is an Ableton Live Max for Live programmer, which is just outputting CCs and gives you a neat little GUI so that you can turn on the arpeggiator, change the latch type, and what the gate outputs do and stuff like this. So it just makes it really easy to edit the machine. So let's have a play with the Arpeggiator mode. This is triggered via MIDI. So what I've done is I've got the output of my computer going in via 5-pin DIN to here. And then this is no longer doing CV and gate, but actually sending MIDI in here. And with these program buttons, we can set up the arpeggiator. And the way that I've got it set up is latching. That means that it will repeat any push note. And if you push that note again, it'll remove it. So you can stack up notes. Kind of like a little sequence. Up to 20 notes. Sweet. Let's do some mother flipping jams with the BeatStep Pro.
UFO vibes. Joined by the hex inverter drums from the Modular. Whoa. Yeah. That's fucking ace. Yeah. Yes. Oh yes. Yes. Fucking dope. So that is an intro to the Make Noise No Coast. A strange, growly, gnarly little bugger, which can make a wonderful companion to Eurorack and other subtractive synths with CV outputs, but by itself, a complete little wild, scroggly noise box maker with many, 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 many different things to be explored. Thanks for watching. See you soon.